Mary strolled down the carriage, peering into each compartment and finding only young men inside. The conductor trailed behind her, lightly touching her shoulder. When she turned around, the employee accompanying the passenger carriage winked at her. "The brass band is coming. Plenty of single folks aboard. I checked their passports." Mary woke up suddenly, leaping out of bed to grab her husband's passport from the chest of drawers. After confirming the marriage stamp was present, she sighed in relief, settling onto the couch beside the chest and smiling. She gazed lovingly at her husband, who lay on his side, his hands cradling his cheek. "What a handsome man. A true hero," Mary whispered, her smile warm. It seemed James sensed her words. He chewed his lips in his sleep and turned to his other side. Lost in thought, she pondered the meaning of her dream. Was it an omen of misfortune? Tomorrow, her husband, James, would be leaving for a competition. The folk instrument orchestra from their village had been touring various towns for quite some time. James was a renowned accordionist, following in his father's footsteps. He had even graduated from a music school, although he currently worked as a bus driver. However, it seemed increasingly likely he would leave that job to pursue music more seriously. The orchestra received frequent invitations to concerts and events, and one day, a producer from the capital recognized their talent and invited them to a folk music competition. Now that long-awaited day had arrived, James would be departing with the orchestra for 2 weeks, and what lay ahead was still uncertain. Mary was confident her husband would gain fame, but what about her? She envisioned the excitement of filming, fans clamoring for autographs, and million-dollar contracts. Overwhelmed by emotion, she quietly began to cry. Jealousy bubbled up within her. She felt envious of every lamppost, fearing some celebrity might notice James, such a handsome man. However, he didn't appreciate her jealousy. What would he think? Mary and James had met when they were both in their 30s, each with a failed marriage behind them due to infidelity. James had been betrayed by his wife, while Mary had suffered the same fate with her husband. Needless to say, they understood each other well. Having experienced betrayal, they longed for a fresh start with someone who truly understood, respected, and would never cheat. They became just that for each other. 3 months after meeting, Mary and James wed and went on a honeymoon. Even then, Mary noticed her husband had an eye for beautiful women, which drove her to distraction. After a time, she could no longer contain her frustration. "James, are you going to break your neck?" "What do you mean, honey?" "Like this. You keep turning your head, afraid to miss even one girl. It could make your head spin." "Don't be jealous, sweetheart. I'm just working up an appetite, and then we can head to the room for lunch," he said, raising an eyebrow and winking. "If you don't stop, you'll be having lunch in the hospital cafeteria," she replied, playfully shaking her fist at him. James chuckled softly. At first, he found it amusing, but soon he realized just how deeply Mary's jealousy ran. She suffocated him with her possessiveness, even toward his friends. From the beginning, she had been wary of his married friends, refusing to meet their wives and forbidding him from going out alone. Their wives used to talk to your ex-wife. "You've been friends with Alex and Sam for a long time, haven't you? They'll gossip about me every time they see Samantha." "They don't even see her," James sighed. "How do you know? Did they tell you? So you're talking to Alex and Sam's wives without me? Do your friends know about this? Or maybe you have a secret relationship with one of them." Mary's imagination ran wild. These discussions always spiraled into arguments. Eventually, James would find refuge at his mother's house, just down the street. 15 minutes later, Mary would call her mother-in-law, anxious to know if James had arrived, fearing he was off seeing another woman. Over time, James distanced himself from his friends. He was so worn out by the constant domestic disputes that he chose to appease Mary, hoping to restore peace at home. He loved her deeply and wanted her to be happy. After all, friendships were important, but a peaceful home was paramount. James was mistaken to think that Mary would feel relieved. She had become increasingly uncomfortable with her husband's unmarried acquaintances, the young men he rehearsed with at the village club. "They're single, and they can flirt with whomever they want," Mary warned, pouting. "You'll end up cheating on me, darling. I don't want you hanging out with them." "Mary, this is my music group. We're just rehearsing together," James replied, irritation creeping into his voice. "I don't like those rehearsals," she insisted, her mood soaring. "And I do like them," he snapped back, frustration bubbling over. "You'll just have to deal with it. Honestly, I'm starting to like family life less and less, but I keep quiet about it." Mary was taken aback. How could he feel this way? She loved him, cared for him, and sacrificed so much. Yet it seemed he was unhappy with something. "Of course you'd prefer it if you could cheat, and I'd just turn a blind eye," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Good Lord, I'm not going to cheat on you, Mary. I've never cheated on anyone. I love only you. I need you. Why are you feeling so jealous? I haven't given you any reason to." Their conversation stretched on, eventually leading to another argument. Mary cried, but James was tired of the constant turmoil. He dressed and left for rehearsal, leaving Mary feeling lost and overwhelmed by her jealousy. Her mother had suggested she accompany James to rehearsals to keep an eye on him. "Why not? You'll be right there with him, and it'll ease your mind," her mother shrugged. "Oh, Mom, that'll just make him angry. He'll say the team is laughing at him because I'm tagging along. He's been so tense lately. It feels like I can't say anything without setting him off," Mary complained. "Who knows what he really doesn't like? Just watch. He'll get upset. He's a married man, out in the evenings who knows where. It's a slippery slope. Think about it. A whole group of single guys. If you're not careful, you might end up without him. By the way, there's a women's choir rehearsing at the club," her mother added with a knowing glance. Mary pondered her mother's words. She deeply valued her family and was willing to do anything to preserve it. The next day, she met with the director of the women's choir, eager to sign up and join rehearsals in the evenings to keep an eye on James. However, Mary quickly realized that she wasn't accepted into the choir. She completely overlooked the fact that singing ability was required. So absorbed was she in her determination to address her marital issues that she hadn't considered this at all. "Mary, you have no sense of pitch at all," the choir director remarked, surprised. "And no talent either," chimed in a cleaning lady from the hall, who was mopping the floor where auditions were taking place. "Please, just take me. I promise I won't sing if you don't like it," Mary pleaded. "Excuse me, but why would we want you in the choir then?" the director asked, puzzled. "I don't want your choir. I want my husband," Mary snapped, frustration boiling over as she stormed out. In the corridor, the cleaning lady who had worked at the village club for years and had seen her share of drama stopped her. "What's the matter? You trying to keep an eye on your husband?" she winked. "Not so much keep an eye as be aware of what he's up to," Mary sighed. "My partner is quitting to take care of her grandson. Her daughter is returning to work after maternity leave. If you want, you can take her place. You'd be washing floors in the dressing room and lobby in the evenings, but at least you'd be able to keep an eye on your husband," the cleaning lady suggested knowingly. Mary jumped at the opportunity and secured a job at the local club just a few days later. James was not pleased. "Oh no, what's going on? You decided to keep tabs on me now?" he asked, his tone incredulous. "James, I just wanted to earn some extra money." "There's nothing wrong with that," she insisted. Over the years, Mary had managed to shape the relationship so that James was completely under her watchful eye. At rehearsals, she kept him in sight, and they would return home together. Weekends were spent in each other's company, and he gradually limited his contact with friends until eventually he had none left. He came home for lunch and hurried home after work to avoid upsetting her. Mary felt satisfied with how things were, but James was not. He found her possessiveness suffocating. Had he ever given her a reason to doubt him? No. So what was going on? The guys at work were quick to label James's wife as a manipulator. They said she tried to completely dominate him, keeping him under her thumb, as the saying goes. We still need to figure out why she divorced her first husband, the mechanic remarked. I already know, James replied. He cheated on her, which led to their divorce. Your Mary James would drive anyone to cheat, chuckled a young driver who had just started at the motor depot. I wouldn't wish a wife like that on my worst enemy. Just look at you. You don't even have a life of your own anymore. You don't hang out with your friends, and you rush home after work. She even follows you to rehearsals. She doesn't follow me. She works at the club, James replied, feeling defensive. Your wife is a nurse at the outpatient clinic, but she's not working at the club. She's just there to keep tabs on you. Why do you think she's so jealous? All her actions are designed to control you, and it looks like she's succeeding. She knows you're weak and is tightening the grip. No, you're wrong. Mary has been through a lot with her first husband, so now she's afraid of everything. Once burned, twice shy, you know? She doesn't want to deal with betrayal again. But I'm not going to cheat on her, and I want to prove that to her, James replied, his voice rising with conviction. Yet as he spoke, doubts began to creep into his mind. Maybe his colleagues had a point. That evening, as soon as James returned home, the familiar scene unfolded. Why did you take so long? Where have you been? Dinner is almost cold, Mary muttered, her tone accusatory. I worked until 6, and it's only 6:30 now, James replied, incredulous. 20 minutes from the bus depot. Were you with someone? Did you find another woman? Just admit it so I don't look like a fool, Mary said, her anger bubbling to the surface. Mary, what woman? I was only 10 minutes late because I stopped by the store, James sighed, exasperated by her relentless jealousy. It's funny that you went into the store and didn't buy anything, or did you go in just to browse? She retorted, irritation clear in her voice. Forget it. I'm not in the mood for dinner anymore. I'm going to get ready for rehearsal, James said sadly, turning away from the kitchen. Of course, how can I keep you at home? Mary continued. There's nothing interesting here, but at the club, there are plenty of divorcees and single women. James stayed silent as he slipped on his shoes and left the house. He was in no mood for another confrontation. Lately, he had noticed that he dreaded coming home. Mary's constant complaints, suspicions, and jealousy had begun to weigh on him, making him contemplate divorce. Unaware of her husband's growing discontent, Mary pressed on with her agenda. She was determined to find a way to attend the competition with James's ensemble. She tried everything, but it became clear she wouldn't be joining them. As Mary suffered with her frustration, James felt a sense of relief. Finally, he would have a break from her. The trip went remarkably well. The ensemble made it to the semi-finals, and for 2 weeks, James felt as though he was living in paradise. He even found himself wishing the trip wouldn't end. Just divorce her, one of the band members said. What kind of life is this? Better to be single than to suffer like that. James knew deep down that he didn't want to continue living with Mary. So upon his return, he told her straight away, I want a divorce. So I was right? You've been seeing someone else. All this time, you've been cheating on me, Mary accused, crossing her arms defiantly. What are you talking about, Mary? I haven't been with anyone while we've been married, James insisted, desperate to defend himself. If you weren't, you wouldn't even think about getting a divorce, she countered, her tone final. No matter how much James tried to explain that other women had nothing to do with his decision, Mary remained resolute. The divorce went through quickly, as they had no children or shared property. A few months later, Mary began dating a widower. When asked why her marriage to James had failed, Mary replied honestly, Vasio was always cheating on me. That's why we broke up. Her new partner sympathized and assured her he would never cheat on a woman. It's just not in my nature, he said earnestly. Mary simply smiled, a knowing glint in her eye, thinking to herself, "Just try it. I'll catch you in no time."